Hello and welcome to another Get Good at Business highlight. I am your host and business coach, Taylor Proctor, here to help you get good at business so you can get back into the heart of why you got into business in the first place. And of course, we do that through utilizing the I Move method, which stands for intuition, marketing, operations, velocity, and execution. And I'm so excited to be joined by our wonderful guest today, the amazing business owner, Julia Michelle, because she's going to be pulling back the curtain on the areas of her business, the areas of the I Move method where she applies in her business and how that works for her. So, Julia, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to dive in.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So Julia, she works mostly with professionals turned entrepreneurs. She's an RN by trade and helps them develop, document, and delegate their brand voice in a way that lets them choose who they want to be in their business. She uses her brand voice biometrics method to actually measure and document brand voice, which lets people delegate their marketing/writing without losing what makes them sound like them. She's found this process to be very validating for people and essentially lets them articulate what they've intuitively known all along. So, Julia, I'm excited. I am so stoked to hear about you, your business. I think this idea of voice and brand biometrics just sounds incredible. But before we get into that, I've got to know what inspired you to transition from nursing and being an RN to brand voice consulting and how your background has really influenced your approach in that space.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one that I've been thinking about quite a bit recently, actually, because I started my business in 2020. It was, out of a desire to leave nursing for the most part. I had been travel nursing, COVID hit, it was a whole thing. My husband at the time, now ex-husband, was in the military, so he was deploying. It was just a lot of life circumstances where I needed to have a job that wasn't nursing and that wasn't location specific. And so I found copywriting and thought like, oh, that looks really interesting. I'd never heard of it before. I'd always been interested in psychology and writing, so it seemed like a kind of perfect combination. And it's been, well, now 4 years. And so I've gone from copywriting to mentoring other copywriters to now specifically focusing on brand voice. And what I found was that in my copywriting and even in my mentoring, it was something that I kept coming back to, was helping people, like, how do you want to say that, right? This is one way to say it, but how do you want to say it? What are other ways that we could say that? And I just didn't really realize, it's the same thing that I didn't know copywriting existed. I didn't know brand voice existed. Didn't know it was a thing. So once I kind of found the language around that, I was like, oh, this is what I've already been doing. And now I've been able to learn this kind of style of brand voice that really lets you measure it and document it. And it just lets so many pieces click for me of why a lot of the advice out there around marketing just really bugs me. Like there's not enough information around what does it mean to be unique or to be authentic or to tell your story or to what, like, none of these things are actually helpful. And so being able to have a framework that lets people finally put things into action the way they wanted it to be is so fun. And there's just, you just have light bulb moments, and people, I had a call this week and people just cry. Like it's so powerful to be able to actually back up. I talk about the intuition piece where we know what we want to sound like. We know what's off, we know what's right. But to be able to actually articulate that and have a system to replicate it is really, really powerful.
I love that. And you're speaking my, I'm going to say, secret language, because when I was in corporate, one of my most successful and favorite roles that I had was we actually developed brand tone and voice to do social media responses on behalf
Yes.
of Google, right? And so
Yes.
like we had a 30-person team, but every single person on the team had to be aware of the brand, the tone, the voice,
Yes.
and making sure that we showed up as though we were one personality, but
Mm-hmm.
written by many people. And
Yes.
obviously, we're talking on more of a smaller scale of entrepreneurs and business owners, solopreneurs having that strong foundation. But I believe and have seen in my own career and path, like that strong foundation gives you so much room for growth and scale at
Yes.
a whole on a much bigger level. So it's such a
Yes.
powerful and important topic.
Yeah. And it's something that I think a lot of people are understandably really hesitant to outsource in their business. It's such a personal thing, right? What you write and how you sound and how you're coming across online. And a lot of copywriters don't have a great way to kind of know, they either intuitively get your voice or they don't.
Right.
And so it's hard for business owners, I mean, myself included, like the thought of outsourcing my own content, right? It's like, you kind of get that, like, this is me and I'm trusting someone else. But once you have that framework, like you said, whether it's you writing for yourself, whether you're using AI and you want a tool to better allow you to, form the AI content into what you want it to sound like, whether you're hiring one writer, 30 writers, 100 writers, like this is what makes it scalable. And it takes it away from, oh, well, you just have to be able to read my mind, to like, no, we actually have a guide that lays out, what sentence length we're going to be using and what words we use and what kind of punctuation we it's much more specific than I think people think that it can be.
Absolutely. And such a
Yeah.
foundational piece for saving time, money, effort, energy. I mean, all of it. So
Yeah.
good. So let's get into the areas of the I move method.
Yeah.
We have touched on intuition already a couple of times. I would love for you to share a specific instance where intuition played a key role in really shaping the direction of your brand voice consulting company.
Yeah. I think just following that interest and noticing the theme that the mentorship that I did had a number of different facets to it. We talked about client acquisition, we talked about blah, blah, blah. But what I kept coming back to and what I wanted to keep working with, on one-on-one, the ongoing coaching students that I had, was always around this expression, right? How are you sounding like you? How are you making your brand different? And how are you making it something that you want it to be, right? Not just following the templates or the best practices or whatever else is out there, actually looking at like, well, what do you want to sound like? And I think it's been that intuition that is going like, this is something that I am intuitively good at that. And that is something where even before I had this kind of brand voice framework, I was really good at, that I really enjoyed doing. My clients got great results from it, and it just came really easily. So following that and being able to actually put some structure around it has been a huge pivot point in my business, because it's allowed me to take it beyond that, like, I don't really know what I'm doing, I just happen to be good at it stage, and go like, no, this is what I'm doing. And now, as I'm saying, like, now I can articulate what I do.
Yeah.
And it just puts so much more ease around it.
Well, and we always talk about here, like a line that can grow in action leads to everything else. And so
Yeah.
I think you've really honed in on it's that consistent of like, I'm really good at this and I really enjoy this, and taking that line through in action. I love that you said, right, following those nudges, and then it has like now putting a framework to it has done wonders for your business. And
Yeah.
that's what I love about intuition, and why it's the first part of
Yeah.
I move, is because it is helping take that align and can grow in action, which then of course leads to momentum in your marketing. So as we
Mhm.
move to the M, what
Yeah.
marketing strategies have you found to be most effective in really connecting with that target audience of professionals turned entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's something that's still evolving, because this is, in the 4-year lifespan of my business, this is a fairly new pivot. So
Mhm.
I'm still finding that path that works best for this particular style. But right now it's a combination of, I have my email list that I give updates to. I have my Facebook group. I'm on Facebook. A lot of people are interested in, there's a lot of referrals that happen with this, because I now do such a specific thing.
Mhm.
A lot of people do things around it. So they do things like business coaching, or they do things even like brand coaching. I collaborated with a woman who focuses on branding, but she mostly helps people with their visual branding. And so I came in and did kind of a guest speaker supplement to her like mastermind group, talking specifically about the voice.
Mhm.
And that's been something that's been really helpful, is now that I've chosen such a narrow little niche, that collaborating with other people has actually really opened up, because I'm not stepping on anyone's toes. No one else is doing this. Like,
Right.
it's really it's very specific, and it's really complementary to what a lot of other people do. And, I was working with even a website designer, and she does the website, she does all the colors, she does all the logo branding. And she included a little piece in her branding guide that was brand voice. And, her and I talking, she was the first to admit, she's like, I don't know what this is. Like, I don't love doing it. It's not super helpful. Like, there's nothing really here, but I just like throw it in there. And I think that's what a lot of people do with brand voice.
Right.
But I can come in and go like, that is literally the only part that I do. So it's very complimentary to what a lot of other people offer.
Yes. And so what I'm hearing in that is by niching down, being specific, marketing has gotten easier. Collaborations and opportunities have opened up so that
Yeah.
you are building your email list, your socials, and being able to
Yeah.
connect with those ideal clients that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my key takeaway from that is for everybody watching, niche down, get specific. And I agree,
Yeah.
right? It is so much
Yeah.
easier when you have one thing that you're focusing on that you do, and then from there it spreads out and it's
Yeah.
in the collaborations and all the other opportunities, but it's so much better for your marketing. And I think also for your operations, because I don't count sales as
Mhm.
marketing, I count them more as an operational play. And so
Yeah.
as we move into the O of operations, I would love it if you could discuss with us some of your operational processes and systems that you have implemented, especially, and I
Yeah.
want to say, looking at it in maybe that bringing people in for sales capacity of operations,
Mhm.
but also I'm sure there's operational processes and procedures that you follow to help develop and discover the brand biometrics.
Yeah. So it's been something that has, it's interesting now that I've had a few different phases in my business. I did the copywriting for clients and then the mentorship, and now this feels operationally much more similar to how I was doing things with the copywriting clients.
Mm.
So it's often getting on a call with people, and it's really a checkpoint for both of us to go like, is this something that would be helpful in your business? Because some people get on a call with me and what they really need is visual branding, or what they really need is a business plan, or what they really need is any number of other things. But if we get on a call and they're at this point where they have a proven thing that they know works, that they know they're good at, that they know their marketing has worked, they want it to work better, they want it to work differently, or they want it to work at a different level. Like, they want to bring on a writing team, or they want to outsource their content, or they want to consistently sound the way they want, instead of feeling like they're throwing spaghetti at the wall and being like, well, here's hoping. It's those people where it's like, yeah, this is exactly what can take your business to the next level. And so it's interesting putting in some of those processes of like the questions that I ask people before they get on a call, or the the type of proposal that I send them. It's all geared towards really making sure that this is a good fit for both of us, that I can legitimately help them, and that it's something that that they're really ready for in their business.
Oh, I love it. So once the marketing and the operations are placed, it really opens up the opportunity to add more velocity, right? So
Mm.
what strategies have you employed to really maintain that momentum, drive that growth, and to generate more velocity for such a unique business, right? Brand voice consulting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something where I'm walking a very fine line right now, because I still work full time. It's funny. I've moved away from bedside nursing, as I wanted to back in 2020. But I have a job now. It's something that I never knew existed, as a clinical informatics specialist. So I have that as like a full-time job that I am really enjoying. And this business is something that I am walking that fine line of my capacity to take on clients versus the marketing, right? So it's something where right now I'm not looking to actually increase that velocity a whole lot. It's more about really honing in on the clients that I want to work with, and getting more specific on, what do the different kind of elements of the services look like? How much do I want to do bespoke services versus kind of, these are the set packages, and looking at those kind of elements and really fine tuning them.
I love that. And one
Yeah.
thing I want to call out for anybody watching and listening too is when we talked about niching, right? But you also just said, okay, different packages and services. So you have niched in on an overview of what you offer and the audience,
Yeah.
but the products, the offerings themselves give you that flexibility within your business.
Yeah, and I would argue too that the audience has actually broadened. Like when I was working as a copywriter, I was working pretty specifically with therapists, so that was kind of the niche that I chose. When I was mentoring, I was working really specific with copywriters, specifically with copywriters. And now that I'm doing brand voice, the service is so narrow. I mean, like I said, there's still kind of some variety in there, but what that's actually allowed me to do is widen the audience a lot. I've worked with a copywriter because they're kind of who's in my world. I've worked with that branding coach. I've worked with another coach. I've worked with an architect who has his own firm. Like there's so many more options of who needs this. Like you mentioned at the start, anyone from a solopreneur to like Coca-Cola needs a brand voice guide. So it's very interesting seeing how the service is so specific, but the audience is wider, and the variety of, obviously tailoring the packages that a solopreneur does not need the same level of brand voice guide as Coca-Cola,
Right.
but they still need this service is really fun to be able to do.
I love that. And I love your story too, because I think it really highlights how many times we can shift and evolve and grow in our businesses over the 4 years to
Yeah.
come to the thing that is like, and here it is, right?
Yeah.
So speaking of coming to the thing, and here it is, let's move to the E of I Move, which is all about execution, right? So what
Yeah.
is a major initiative or project that is here that you're focusing on for your brand, for your business?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of it is really looking at where are the gaps in the current kind of narrative around marketing. And it's been so helpful. So you asked about kind of the origin of how I got into this framework in the brand voice biometrics. So it's based on a framework that was developed by Justin Blackman and Abby, I believe her last name is Woodcock, Abby Woodcock, I think. Brand Voice Academy is their school or training program. And so they're the ones who really kind of did the the hard work of going, oh, you can measure brand voice. And so I took his training program and have since developed my own kind of version of it, which is the biometrics. But really looking at my own brand voice and the two, there are kind of 9 main voice types that we see come through, and they all have different metrics. So I look at the words people use, the tone they use, the cadence, so like the sentence length, kind of the rhythm, and the style, so their punctuation. And if you kind of tune those 4 things differently, you end up with very different voices.
Right.
So there are 9 kind of big categories that we can put voices into. Obviously, they're like hybrids and different variations, but it was really interesting doing the brand voice work on my own business that, there were connections that I never really expected, even from nursing to brand voice, right? Like, what do I bring in that's the same me as when I do nursing to when I do brand voice? What's different? What's the same? Really looking at those things. And the 2 voices that I use most often in my brand are 2 that we call friend at the bar. So it's very relatable. It's more storytelling. It's quite casual language, more, as the name would suggest, right? More just that you're sitting up next to someone and they're like, hey, I thought this was cool. I thought maybe you'd think it was cool. And here we go. The other one that comes through really strongly for me is it's called anti-establishment, which is that most things that are out there are wrong and there's a better way to do them. And that has been so interesting for me to tap into in my own voice of looking at most of the marketing advice that's out there and going like, this is crazy. This is absolutely bonkers what's out there. And not just going like, well, that's crazy, like good luck, but actually being able to say like, this is why that's so nuts. This is why people are bouncing from one thing to the next and trying this template and that template and this best practice and this back, but like it's so confusing and overwhelming. And what I've found is the thing to solve that is the idea that there are multiple types of brand voice that are all equally good, equally strong. They're all like, this whole idea of just be unique and just be yourself is so unhelpful in my experience. And being able to instead look at it and go, okay, but like, what version of yourself do you want to have in your business, right?
Mm.
Maybe you talk to your boss one way and you talk to your partner another way and you talk to your kid. Like, we all use different voices. So the idea that there's one you out there and it's going to be the same you, it's craziness. So helping people decide and choose, what voice do you want to have in your business? What tones do you want to bring through? And then looking at things like what language and what sentence lengths best support that. What punctuation would actually let you get that point across the way that you want? And it's really measurable once you come down to it. You don't just have to guess.
Mm. I love that. And I see for a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, specifically coaches, when they're working with other coaches, they start to adopt the voice of who they're working with,
Yes.
which is in my mind, I mean, I'm a business coach and I work with people and I'm like, intuition first, like, does this
Mhm.
make sense for you? Not because I'm saying it should be happening that way, but because it's
Yes.
got to make sense for you and your business. And I
Yes.
think it's the same thing with tone and voice, where
Yes.
it's like, you can't listen to somebody and then be like, I want to talk about that too, and just whoop, and then think that's
Yes.
going to work. And I think that there's
Yes.
also I would love your thoughts on this. I think that there's an energetic exchange, right? When
Mm.
there's the energy behind, like, okay, this is how I show up. This is how I speak
Yes.
on behalf of my business. This is how I do these things. That gives such a strong foundation that energetically you're able to move forward instead of taking, oh, that worked for somebody else. Maybe I'll
Yes.
try it. And then it kind of just fumbling over and it's just another wasted and lost opportunity.
Yeah. And I think, you know, there's something to it that, I find that when I read books or when I follow someone's content, you naturally get influenced by those things.
Of course.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, you might find yourself using some old English if you're reading, Little Women or something, but there's a difference between that and having it's when it turns into the like should that really gets me, right? Of like, oh, I can't say it this way. I should say it that way. And that's where I'm like, ooh, like, should you really? Like, you don't have to. There's no rule saying that you have to. And the crazy part is, especially with the background in copywriting that I have, is that there are actually rules out there that say, you must always write at a grade 5 level or below. Always put a space between each sentence so that you're blocking it out for people. Always like use emojis, don't use emojis, share. Like there are so many rules out there and they're almost all contradictory. And that's where the thing that kind of quiets the noise for me is going, you know what, that is absolutely a valid technique. If you want to write at a grade 2 level in all of your content, then like good on you.
Do it.
That's probably a translator voice and you're going to have simple punctuation. You're going to use simple words. You're going to use short sentences and it's going to be great. Perfect. But there's also the other end of the spectrum where we can write at like a postgraduate level and you're going to have no funky punctuation at all. You're going to very wisely stick to your APA guide. You're going to have long rambly sentences with elevated language. And most copywriters, any direct response copywriter that you hand that to is going to go like, oh God, like that's wrong. It's not wrong. There are tons of brands that I can give you examples of that have successful, I mean, Tiffany's is one of them. If you look at Tiffany's, the like diamond company, if you look at their website and actually measure their voice, it is insane. It is so off the charts, elevated and snooty and like all of the things that you would tell someone not to be in their brand voice. And I don't think Tiffany's is like hurting for business. So there's just such a broad spectrum that once people, you're right, you see a coach do it and you're like, this is the only way to do it. And then you see another coach do it and you're like, well, that's the only way to do it. And you just kind of ping pong around without ever pausing to think like, how do I want to do it?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So needed. I love this. Julia, How can our audience learn more about you, learn more maybe on how they can figure out which of those 9 spots that they fall into? Just how can they
Yeah.
connect with you further?
Yeah, great question. So I actually, the opt-in that I think you're going to share the link to is about those 9 voice types, because that to me is where it really starts. That's like, once you see it laid out, it's just so helpful to give yourself permission to go like, I can sound a bunch of different ways. So what I've done in that PDF is written out what is essentially the same email 9 different ways.
Mhm.
So I've written what would be, a promo email for a fictional sock company, and you can see it in the 9 different voices. And what I've done is I didn't just write out the 9 voices, which again, intuitively, we start with that intuition. As you read them, they're different voices. You automatically can hear them differently. But what I've done is actually added what I call a little cheat sheet at the bottom of each voice to give you the metrics of them. So I've actually measured out, like, what are they doing with their words? What are they doing with their tone? What are they doing with their cadence? What are they doing with their styling? And that way you can see it kind of, gives you that peek behind the curtains of what is actually happening in this voice style. And it lets you decide, like, if there's 1 or 2 that you really kind of go like, oh yeah, that's more my style. You can look at the little cheat sheet and then actually reverse engineer your voice to more closely match the style that you like. So it gives you the fingerprint essentially of that voice so that you can match it, or you can, closely match it, you can adjust it, but it gives you all of the information.
Oh, yes. Okay, so that link is in the description of this video, but also you can go to juliamichelleagency.com/hashtag, or if you're old school, # opt in.
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Julia, thank you so much for joining us today. Such a delight to be able to chat with you. Really appreciate you highlighting and showing us the behind the scenes of how you run your business within the areas of the iMove method.
Yeah, of
And
course.
for everyone watching, thank you for joining us today. Stay tuned. We will have more Get Good at Business highlights coming your way. But in the meantime, remember to keep on going, use the iMove method, and remember that you can get good at business.